What would you do if a client, after years of a great working relationship, suddenly refused to pay you thousands of dollars for completed work? In today's story, the protagonist's choice is a masterclass in how to handle it. Many years ago, I was a freelance computer-aided design, or CAD, specialist. I took people's ideas and turned them into proper plans for construction or manufacturing. I did everything from house plans and remodels to venue lighting systems and manufacturing machinery. This particular story involves a man I'll call Victor, his right-hand man Gary, and an awesome secretary named Brenda. Victor worked in the construction industry, primarily building houses for a major developer. We had known each other socially for a few years before he called me one day needing some custom home plans and drawings for building permits. The company's own CAD person was swamped, so he outsourced the work to me. On top of that, with his boss's blessing and investment, Victor was launching his own construction company and wanted me to be his go-to guy for plans. I was excited. Victor was a strong type A personality, the kind of guy who barrels his way to the top of whatever he does. I figured if he was making serious money, some of that would trickle down to me. For 2 years, everything was fantastic. Our only contract was a handshake, a mutual agreement to be honest and fair with each other. Victor's business exploded. He went from a one-man operation in his loft to a small office, and then to a larger office with a full staff. His company had several subdivisions in development, and business was booming. A key to his success was a set of about 20 base house plans I had developed for him. Each base plan had 5 different exterior options, different roof lines, windows, and so on. This meant all the houses were structurally similar and efficient to build, but they all looked distinct from the outside. He even allowed for interior customizations, as long as people didn't try to move load-bearing walls. I printed up simple handouts for him, a basic floor plan on the front, and the 5 exterior elevations on the back. Business was so good that Victor needed a right-hand man, and he offered me the job. The salary was tempting, about 3 times what I was making on my own. But honestly, I had no desire to work for him. I enjoyed working with him, but being subjugated to a personality that strong wasn't for me. To avoid turning him down flat, I gave him a list of unreasonable demands for employment: flexible hours, massive benefits, bonus opportunities. Thankfully, he said no. I continued my freelance work for him, and soon he wanted to upgrade the marketing handouts. He now wanted an individual, high-quality floor plan for each of the 5 exterior options for every base model, with a unique landscaped rendering on the back of each one. It was a big project. I told him I'd do one set to see what was involved and then give him a price. He agreed. I gave him what I felt was a fair estimate, and he gave me the green light to start on the first 3 plans. When I delivered those first 3 sets, 15 renderings in total, Victor wanted to introduce me to someone. His name was Gary, and he was Victor's new right-hand man. From now on, Victor told me, Gary would be my primary contact. I didn't mind, as long as my checks kept clearing. But there was something off about Gary. A little voice in the back of my mind told me not to trust him. Still, Victor was a sharp guy who knew the industry, and if he trusted Gary, I figured I should put my concerns aside. After all, We had 17 more sets of renderings to complete. I finished the next 7 sets, which was 35 more renderings, and prepared an invoice for around $5,000. I dropped them off, and Gary was thrilled. He told me to leave the bill with the secretary, Brenda, and that it would be paid in the next check run. This was standard procedure. I knew Brenda from a previous client. She was a sweet woman who had known Victor for years. But don't let the sweetness fool you. Brenda knew everything that went on in that office and could read people like a book. She was not someone to be crossed. A week later, I got a call from Gary. He informed me they would not be paying my bill at the rate we'd agreed upon. Why? Because they'd found someone who could supposedly do the same work for less than half my price. As many online have pointed out, you'd think someone in the construction industry would understand the importance of building bridges instead of burning them. I told him calmly that they were free to hire whomever they wanted for future work. But I expected to be paid for the work already completed at the rate Victor and I had agreed on. That's when Gary revealed his true colors. He smugly informed me that since we didn't have a written contract, they didn't have to pay me at that rate. And right there, Gary revealed his fatal flaw, his arrogance. He believed a legal loophole was a substitute for integrity, completely unaware that in doing so, he had just handed me all the leverage I would ever need. He was right. Of course. For years, Victor and I had worked successfully on a simple handshake. I hung up and immediately called Victor. He brushed me off, saying it was Gary's issue to handle and he wasn't getting involved. Victor made a critical decision at that moment, choosing to back his new hire over a long-standing, reliable partner. He didn't know it yet, but this single act of blind loyalty to the wrong man would set in motion a chain of events that would eventually bring his own company to its knees. I sent an email to Gary, copying Victor, stating that I expected full payment and would be halting all work until the invoice was settled. Gary replied, accusing me of ripping the company off for years and being angry that he'd found my cash cow. Victor remained silent. A week later, my phone rang again. It was Gary. He wanted the CAD data files for all the floor plans. Their new, cheaper CAD guy needed them so he wouldn't have to redraw everything from scratch. I told him no. Those files were my work product. Since our verbal agreement was only for printed plans and renderings, and we had no written contract specifying otherwise, I was not legally obligated to turn over any data files. Gary started making legal threats. I told him to go right ahead. His own lawyer would tell him the exact same thing. The irony was, if he hadn't been such a jerk, I would have just given them the files. But now, I had an unexpected bargaining chip, and I was going to use it. Another week passed, and Victor called. We value our past relationship, he started. Blah. 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 We need to work something out. A commenter on my original story summed up the perfect response: fucking pay me. It's amazing how people don't get that. I told Victor exactly how displeased I was with Gary's tactics and with the fact that he, Victor, had blindly backed him up. Ever the pragmatist, Victor asked what it would take to fix this and get the files. Pay the $5,000 you owe me, I said. And then we'll talk. He balked, saying he couldn't make a deal that made Gary look like an idiot. Nothing can change the fact that Gary is an idiot. I shot back. Finally, Victor made a counteroffer. He would pay me $2,000 for the renderings I'd delivered and $3,000 for the drawing files. It was the full $5,000 just packaged differently to save Gary's pride. I agreed, but with conditions. I would come in the next week to deliver the files and get the check. And Gary himself would have to be the one to hand me the check. And, I added, Gary would have to apologize for how he treated me. Victor agreed. The big day arrived. I walked into the office. And Brenda, the secretary, held up an envelope with the check inside. That's not what we agreed to, I said calmly. She just smiled. I tried to tell him, she said. But he wouldn't listen. She buzzed Gary's office and announced that I was here. I could hear his muffled, angry voice shouting from down the hall. Brenda listened for a moment. Then said, I'll ask him. A pause. Then, he says you need to hold up your end of the deal or he's walking out the door. My jaw must have dropped. She gave me a sly smile and then announced in a loud, clear voice, Gary will be here in a moment. That's when I realized her reception desk was in earshot of several other offices. In at least 3 of them, I could see people suddenly looking very busy at their desks. But it was obvious they were all listening intently. This clearly wasn't the first time Gary had been forced to eat crow in the lobby. Gary stormed out, his face a mask of thunder. He snatched the check from Brenda, muttered a half-hearted, through gritted teeth apology, and shoved the check at me. I placed the renderings and the disk with the data files on Brenda's desk, took my check, and walked out. I ran into Brenda a few months later, and she filled me in. Apparently, Gary being forced to apologize in the lobby was a regular occurrence, much to the staff's delight, as I wasn't the only person he'd treated poorly. She told me she couldn't stand him and hoped he'd screw up badly enough for Victor to finally see the light. About a year later, he did. Victor fired Gary after discovering he had been systematically replacing Victor's trusted subcontractors with his own cronies. These new subs would inflate their bills and give Gary kickbacks. The whole mess ended in a lawsuit between Victor and Gary. Victor won. But the scandal nearly destroyed his business and cost him many long-standing professional relationships. As one person wisely noted, Victor's main problem was that he was an idiot for trusting Gary in the first place. I got paid, but I lost out on the rest of that large rendering project. The loss of that $5,000 in future work always stuck with me. And my relationship with Victor was finished. I vowed that if I ever got the chance, I would get even. I didn't know it then. But 3 years later, my chance would come. In the end, this whole ordeal taught me a critical lesson: your work has value. Your word has weight. And your integrity is your shield. Never let anyone bully you into thinking otherwise, especially when you hold the keys to the kingdom. So, let me ask you, have you ever been in a situation where a handshake deal went south? How did you handle it? And what would you have done in my shoes?